Emmerdale's Bradley Riches confirms Lewis's future ahead of groundbreaking and emotional scenes. We are going to learn a lot more about him. Emmerdale's Bradley Riches has opened up with thoughtful, clear-eyed honesty about what's next for Lewis's Barton, and it sounds both tender and tough in all the right ways. I think the most striking thing here is his promise that we'll learn a lot more about Lewis, not via shock twists, but through the close-up textures of daily life. Masking, overstimulation, and the private crash that so often follows a public smile. That's where the real drama sits, in the gap between how you're seen and how you feel. Riches frames Lewis as a people's person who reads warm and buoyant in a crowd. Yet he gently dismantles the assumption that this means he's fine. The point about masking lands hard. The little laughs to soften an interaction, the extra brightness in a tone, the way you keep the social energy going because the job or the room expects it. That sets the table for this week's beat after Cammie's housewarming. The cafe shift becomes the tipping point, a growing queue, the relentless churn of orders, the noise in the eyes, all the invisible needles that prickle at once, and Lewis reaches the limit. He drops what he's doing and rushes home, fighting a rising panic. It's simple, recognizable, and sadly common. What matters dramatically and emotionally is what happens next, and who meets him there with care rather than judgment. I think this is where the show's heart can really show. Enter Nicola. Her clocking that something is wrong and heading to Delview feels quietly momentous. For a character best known for sharp elbows and a sharper tongue, this is compassion in action, seeing past the performance to the person. If she finds Lewis overstimulated, depleted, and ashamed of letting people down, the right response isn't a pep talk. It's space, softness, and practical help. It's clear that Emmerdale wants to model that support first, solace later, and no shame in the crash after the mask. What's powerful about Rich's own words is how cleanly they map onto the drama. Saying yes to parties, then needing to leave. Keeping the facade up for as long as you can. The cost that arrives when the door finally clicks shut. Lewis isn't being inconsistent, he's being human while autistic in a world that demands constant performance. I think the show is smart to anchor this in work and friendships, rather than turning it into a very special episode. It's the everyday stakes, keeping a job you're good at, showing up for people you care about, that make this hit home. From a storycraft angle, the housewarming was the perfect pressure test. Too many variables, too many demands, too little exit. Now the cafe sequence crystallizes it. The cue is a neat visual for overload, and that dash home is the body keeping him safe. Dramatically, that choice opens doors. How does management respond? Do colleagues rally or roll their eyes? Does Lewis feel able to explain, or does the mask snap back on with a brittle smile? It's clear the show is edging toward the first option, education through empathy, and that feels right. Crucially, Riches stresses pride in playing Lewis and bringing pieces of himself to the role. That authenticity shows autistic joy and competence deserves screen time as much as autistic overwhelm. And Lewis carries both, a cheeky charm that lights up a room and a nervous system that sometimes says, "Not today." I think the promise to learn a lot more about him hints we'll see coping tools on screen too, planned exits, choir tests after big socials, teammates who run interference when the cue snakes to the door. That's representation with receipts, and it matters if you're reading the emotional weather of the village. This track also offers meaningful beats for the people around Lewis. For Nicola, it's a test of friendship over fuss. For anyone managing him, it's a chance to swap toughen up for what do you need. For the wider community, it's permission to recalibrate expectations without diminishing respect. And for Lewis, the arc is about safety, being able to say, "I'm overwhelmed," without fearing the loss of face, work, or love. It's clear that's the destination, and getting there is the story. So yes, the scenes ahead are groundbreaking, not because they're loud, but because they're honest. A cue becomes a tidal wave. A laugh becomes a life raft. A neighbor knocks on the door and chooses kindness over curiosity. I think that's where Emmerdale does its best work, in the small moments that add up to someone feeling seen. And for Lewis's Barton, being seen exactly as he is might be the bravest, most beautiful plot of all.